When I was a little girl, I always knew that I wanted to become a mom someday, to give birth someday. And I had this feeling in my heart, this knowing that I wanted to give birth in the ocean. And at the time, I didn't even question whether or not that was something people did. Fast forward to many years later when I was pregnant with my first child, and we were on a spiritual expedition of sorts that led me. I was guided to go to a variety of places with my baby's dad to around the country. And we were spending time in ritual gatherings on the land in prayer and in deep meditation for almost my whole pregnancy. We found our way to the Southwest. We spent a few weeks in the Sedona Grand Canyon area, and we were in California for a portion of this time. And we also found our way to Zion National Park in Utah. And on that day, there was a pivotal moment that happened. I had not remembered until I became pregnant that I wanted to have an ocean birth as a little girl. And I think even when I first was pregnant, like in the very first month, 2 months of pregnancy, I feel like I didn't remember then either. But soon after, the memory came flooding back to me. And I told my partner about it, and he was completely open to the idea. He trusted me, he trusted the process. And so on this day, we were in Zion, and I was, I was probably five months pregnant at that point. Yeah. And we didn't know yet where we were going to be giving birth, and we were on the road. We didn't have a home. And so we were on this hike in Zion, a very long hike. It was about an 11-mile hike. And toward the end of the hike, and we had this intention on the hike that we would make a decision about where we were going to go to have the birth, but more specifically, whether we were going to pursue having an ocean birth. So at the end of the 11-mile hike, he and I were walking silently next to one another, and we had this moment where we paused, and it was almost like a time warp reality shift where the sky, there was this vortex in the sky, and this response to our question about whether or not to have an ocean birth that was crystal clear. It was a crystal clear yes. And so after this moment, this awe-inspired moment, we were like, okay, he's going to be born in October. Where can we give birth to him at that time of year in the ocean? And so Hawaii and Southern Florida were the two places that came up as possibilities. I had actually spent a lot of time in Southern Florida. I'm from Massachusetts, and spent a lot of time as particularly a teenager and in my 20s going down to sail and spend time in the Miami area. And I had a really special heart connection with the land there. Though I also had like a little bit of like it's chaotic, it's crazy, like the human component of Southern Florida. It felt like energetically overwhelming to me to think about going to give birth there, and I'd never been to Hawaii, and so I thought, oh, Hawaii, I had this magical idea of what Hawaii was in my head, and could imagine myself in these birthing pools in raw, gorgeous nature. So I started pursuing the idea of having an ocean birth in Hawaii. And I began to reach out to some different midwives there. And I got from all of them actually a lot of fear, response. And the feedback was a strong resistance to doing this. And so I was like, okay, noted. And then I reached out to, at some point, one of my friends said, have you seen this video? And they showed me the ocean birth video that some of you may have seen of giving birth in Russia, in tide pools in Russia. And this was several years ago, maybe in the 80s. And so I saw this video for the first time and I was just weeping. And I knew without a doubt, this was such a full body, full hearted yes for me to do this. And I didn't, there was not a moment actually when I questioned whether or not that was the path for me for giving birth. And so I continued to reach out to different birth wisdom keepers and midwives and research a little bit more. If anyone has done this, if there are people more recently that had done it. And I continued to find little to no information, and everyone that I had reached out to was discouraging about this choice. So at that point in time, we decided to pivot and shift our attention to Southern Florida. And I reached out to 3 different midwives there. And the first one that I reached out to was the midwife that we chose. And it was like a divine blessing to my ears to hear her steady faith and trust in the process and in me and my body and my desires. And there wasn't a strong yes, like not this strong enthusiastic yes, nor was there fear at all. There was just this calm from her. I felt this calm knowing and trust. And just for due diligence, we connected with the other midwives as well, one of which actually became the assistant midwife for my son's birth. And we just felt this calm surety that let's go to Southern Florida. So we shifted our plans to have our travels take us from the West Coast back to the East Coast. And we arrived in Southern Florida with my dear friend who grew up in Southern Florida, and her mom still lived there and had a condo that was there that she was only in part-time. So I had some connections and resources there for being able to find a place to stay for the time period that we were there. And we went and met midwife Mary. And she was as calm and angelic in person as she was in that first phone call. And she continued to be that in the appointments that I had with her leading up to the birth, even when we didn't know where we were going or have a place to live up till the last moments of the birth. She continued to validate my desire and my intuition and my body and my body's wisdom to know how to birth and to communicate with me when something needed to be shifted. So we went ahead with creating a birth plan. And as often happens with birth, pretty much nothing of the plan actually occurred. Because when it came down to, I was going to say going into labor, but that was exactly what happened, is that my water broke and I didn't go into labor. And so her office was in Hollywood, Florida, just north of Miami. And we went there and we waited a little while to see if labor was going to start for me on its own. And it didn't. I was 1 week past my due date. And so she began to use every natural remedy that she knew in her midwifery toolkit and to naturally induce my labor. So because if your water breaks and you don't go into labor, there can be risk of infection to the baby. And so there's a certain time period that I imagine varies from state to state, but in Florida, where if the mom doesn't go into labor within a certain time period, then they need to go to the hospital to get induced. And so I continued to feel a calm knowing throughout the process. I trusted whatever was meant to be. I hadn't even considered going to the hospital up until that point. And when it came down to what was going on, I was just like, okay, if that's how this baby's going to come and it's going to be most safe for me and the baby, then great, I'm open to it. Now, mind you, I'm a person who leads a highly, and has for my whole adult life, a highly alternative health lifestyle. I don't use Western medicine for anything, really. For my children, I am their healthcare provider, and for myself, so for me to be in this place of receptivity and surrender it was beautiful. It was just like really easy. My partner was a little more flustered around what was going on, and I could actually tell that for the first time I could tell that my midwife was getting getting a little bit tense. And so we were trying, let's see, I drank castor oil. I had an enema. I had some Chinese herbs. And I believe that was the main thing during the day, none of which was inducing my labor at that time. And then our dear friend of ours, who's an acupuncturist, was flying in from New Mexico. And it was a week after my due date, so we had imagined that my son would already be born by then and he would be coming to get to meet the baby. Well, it turns out that that wasn't the case, and all of this was going on so my partner had to leave and go pick him up at the airport, and he told him what was going on when he picked him up. And he had brought a golden needle with him that as soon as he got to the condo we were staying in, he gave me a session. This one golden needle, there's an acupuncture point in your lower leg, your inner lower leg, that induces labor. And as soon as he put that needle in, it got everything jump started. So he removed the needle and we went for a walk on the beach. And at this point, I didn't know I was in labor yet. Retrospectively, looking back, it got everything jump started, but I still didn't know that I was in labor. And so we went for a walk on the beach, and it was becoming evening at this point. The sun was setting, and there was this incredible portal of clouds in the sky with the sun and the sunset colors, these bright oranges that were lighting up the clouds, this big circle of clouds. And we got back to the condo where midwife Mary was and our backup midwife. And she said, are you feeling anything? Are you having any contractions? And I said, no, not really. And she said, let me look. So I sat down in a chair and she looked at my belly and she was like, oh, you're definitely having contractions. I said, really? And then she timed them and they were actually pretty close together. So at that point, hooray, my labor was induced and it was happening. And I went to go lay down to rest and sleep since I didn't know how long the labor was going to be. And at that point, I just felt calm and peaceful in my body. So everyone went to rest, went to sleep. And I woke up around midnight and I could feel that my labor was kicking in much more intensely. So in my friend's mom's condo where we were staying, it was right across the street from the beach in Hollywood, Florida. For any of you who've been there, there's a row of condos, there's a bike path, and then there are these beach plum bushes that block you from seeing the ocean. And they have these like decking pathways that you can enter from the beach pathway down to the beach. It's like a little tunnel. And so we were in one of the condos on the 6th floor, the top floor, across from the bike path in one of these tunnels. So for the majority of my labor, I went into a deep meditative altered state. And I was by myself in the bathroom. There was the bathroom and there was like this skinny little hallway off of the bathroom that was like a makeup area, I guess. There were like mirrors and lights, and then another door and opened into the master bedroom. Everyone else was still sleeping. My partner sat in that little mirrored makeup area on the floor, and I sat in the dark in the bathroom, sitting against the wall with my eyes closed the whole time. And I went into a deep meditation. This went on for about 5 hours. And I had a very dear friend who had given me incredible advice about her experience giving birth. She knew that I was a surfer. And so she used this metaphor where, do you know what it feels like when you're waiting for a wave and you can see it and you can feel it start to come up behind you, and you have to paddle then, because if you don't paddle, you're going to miss the wave and either just miss it completely or you'll get caught in the undertow and start to tumble in the undertow. So she said, contractions are like that. Remember that when you're giving birth. And so I did. I remembered that. And I could feel this gentle wave starting to come. And I was deeply connected with my breath throughout the whole time, but especially when I would feel the wave come, it was like my breath became the paddling. And I would deepen my breath. For the whole time the wave was with me, and that allowed me to surf the contraction so that I didn't feel any uncomfortable sensation at all. There was no experience of pain. There wasn't an intensity, but it wasn't pain at all. And then I would doze off for the minute or minute and a half between contractions, and then I'd feel the wave. So this went on for like 5 hours, and there were a couple of moments when I dozed off and I didn't catch the wave in time before I woke up, and I didn't drop into that rhythmic breathing, where I got caught in the undertow. And I had this thought of like, oh, that's what women talk about when it feels painful during labor. But it only happened 2 times, I think. And the rest of the time I was just like in this incredibly present and powerful, empowered, embodied state of being and relationship and connection with my body and with the baby. And so around 5 hours in, I opened my eyes in this dark room because I saw this bright little ball of light circling my head. And I'm looking at this ball of light and I hear a voice inside of my head that said, "It's time. Are you ready?" And I said, not out loud, in my head, "Yes, I'm ready." And the ball of light went through my crown into my body, and whoosh, this like complete opening happened. And I transitioned into the last stage of labor, like the pushing stage of labor. And I made a loud, moaning, guttural, animalistic sound with my voice. And my midwife heard it from the other room, and she came in to check on me. This was the first time she came in. And she said to me, "Do you want to go down to the ocean? If you do, now is the time." And I hadn't talked to anyone, mind you, for many hours and was in this incredibly altered state. And I said, "I don't know. I can't make any decisions about anything right now." And she said to me, "You came all this way to do this. Let's go." And she grabbed my hand, and somehow I managed to grab my glasses. I put those on my head. I had like my underwear and like a kind of halter top on. And everyone just followed us down silently. So there was my partner, there was my friend who gave me the acupuncture, my friend who told me about the waves. She was surfing the waves. She was there as well. And my friend whose mom's house we were staying in. So 3 friends. And then my partner, the midwife, Mary, and the backup midwife. Everyone walked silently to the elevators. Bright lights to the elevators, and the backup midwife said to me, "Whatever you do, do not have a contraction down in the pool area or garage. Hold that baby in." So we pushed the down button on the elevator. We had to walk through a garage, through the poolside area where I started to have a contraction, but I stopped it by some miracle. Hold that baby in, and across the bike path to the tunnel. And we walked on the decking, and it was completely dark outside. It was the wee hours of the morning, but still completely black outside. And we walked across the decking through the beach plum trees. And as soon as we got through the trees, I felt the warm, humid ocean breeze blow across my skin and through my hair. And I had this incredible sense of peace and calm and knowing I was exactly where I was meant to be. And we kept on walking. And as soon as my toes hit the edge of the water, I started to have a full-on contraction. So I had another contraction there. And then my partner and my friend whose mom's house we were staying in each grabbed one of my elbows. And it was a bit wavy. And we walked out to where I was like, maybe knee deep or a little bit deeper than that. And another contraction came, and I squatted down, and the waves were kind of like knocking. It was like right at that breaking point for the waves. So they were like knocking me over. And so we went a bit deeper, like up to just under my breasts. And midwife Mary stood in front of me, and she anchored me down by my hips. She had both of her hands on each of my hips, and I had each of my partner and friend at my elbows, and then the backup midwife was behind midwife Mary holding her hips. So we had this stable birthing triad, and then my other two friends were like spiritual midwives that were holding the sacred container and being witnesses to the experience. And it turns out later, which I had no idea this was happening, my girlfriend was taking photos the whole time. So for the next hour, the sky was perfectly clear, and there was a half moon in the sky above us, and Orion was right above my eyes. And I would have a contraction and just be fully in this place of presence and in my animal nature, in my voice, in my power of my voice and my expression in my body. And then in the moments in between, absolute peace and calm fell over me and the whole birthing team. And I was just looking up at Orion and the moon, and then another contraction would come, and then calm and up at Orion and the moon. And I found out after we came out of the water, the backup midwife had said that there was a manta ray that was circling us for the whole time we were out there. So after about almost an hour, I was getting chills. I was cold. It was October. He was born on October 11th. And so one thing that I had been aware of was there were multiple midwives who had told me that the temperature might be an issue, and that if I got too cold, that this could cause complications and problems. So of all the advice and opinions that were shared with me when I was researching giving an ocean birth, this was the only one that I kept an awareness of. And so I had the chills almost the whole time I was in the water. And Azaza, my son, he came out pretty easily and quickly. And so once he came out, his head, once he crowned, he came out, and the next push was really smooth and easy. And midwife Mary really quickly scooped him up and handed him to me. And I was wrapped in a bunch of towels. He and I were wrapped in a bunch of towels. And I was like all business then. I went from like being in this completely deeply spiritual, mystical place to like all business, and made a beeline for the shore because I was like, I'm really cold and I'm concerned that this is going to be a problem for me and or the baby. And so we got to the beach, and the midwives asked if I wanted to birth the placenta on the beach, and I said no because of the cold. And I said, no, let's go back up to the condo. And so we backtracked through I forgot a very important point. As soon as I got onto the sand and turned around for a moment and looked at the beach, the sun had cracked on the horizon, and there was that bright orange line that was coming across the horizon, lighting the black night. And daybreak was upon us. And so we were walking back across the boardwalk, like the little decking area in the boardwalk, and looked down, and you could see far down the end of the boardwalk were the morning's first bikers and joggers. And so he couldn't have come in more perfect and divine timing. Now, we were on Hollywood Beach, which is a really busy beach, and it is not where I had planned to give birth. We chose a secluded area that would have been calm and quiet and private. And it was on Columbus Day weekend. So he was born on Columbus Day weekend, on the Sunday of Columbus Day weekend. So it was a holiday weekend and even more busy. But no one knew that I had given birth out there and that this miracle had just happened. So we went back up to the condo and I birthed the placenta, and baby and I were thriving and healthy and happy and just in absolute bliss. It was a complete ecstatic birth experience. And my friends walked out onto the patio to continue watching the sunrise and saw that there were a few early morning swimmers that went just specifically right to where I had given birth. And I had thought Azaza was a girl the whole time I was carrying him, and his name, Azaza, came to me during meditation when he was about 3.5 months in utero. When I was about 3.5 months pregnant, I was doing very long meditations for every day of my pregnancy and communicating with the baby and using crystals on my belly and sleeping with crystals and different herbs under my pillow each night and listening, really cultivating my sense of listening, deep, subtle listening to the earth, to the crystals, to my body, to my baby, to my intuition, to spiritual guidance. It was a time for me of profound spiritual growth and expansion that was kicked off it kicked off right before I consciously conceived Azaza. About a month before I was guided to these books, and who ended up becoming called The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life by Drumbelow Melchizedek. And when I first looked at these books, I was just like looking at the table of contents, and my skeptic in me was like, there's no way someone can cover all of this territory in this like short of a book. And I just kept getting this very clear calling to get these two volumes, volume 1 and 2, these books. And I devoured them, and staying up all night until I read both of them over a couple of days period. And then my partner, the same thing. And it catalyzed this incredible alchemical activation, profound spiritual awakening for me. And we immediately it just completely shifted my perception of reality on many levels. And we went on New Year's Eve weekend to a workshop that was learning how to do the meditation that he's talking about in the book, using sacred geometries around you. And we went there, and then we came back after that weekend, and I had, for the first time, we used a Anking, Egyptian sexual energy practice that I had learned and been exposed to through these books and through my spiritual mentor, and conceived Azaza. And it was the beginning of my now decades-long journey of diving deeply into sexual alchemy and sexual energy practices, and using sexual energy to heal, which is the heart of my professional work. I'll mention more about that in a minute. But yeah, so we consciously conceived Azaza with absolute ease, and then set off on this journey for my whole pregnancy that culminated in the ocean birth in southern Florida. And there were so many moments along the way where I had to choose to trust in the subtle whisperings of my intuition and of my body and of my son's spirit, his soul speaking to me. Yeah, so it was it was one of the most magical and profound experiences of my life. And it was a deep, deep, deep healing initiation for me, which I think birth is always for women in the many various ways. For me personally, it was a profound moment of sexual healing and embodiment for me as a woman. I felt a sense of power and knowing and trust in my body and in myself that I hadn't experienced before, and that in fact had been fractured from various sexual traumas that I experienced as a young person. And so this was like a major turning point for me. And it wasn't just about giving birth, it was about the whole process from conscious conception, sacred conscious conception, through a very intentional and spiritual pregnancy journey, which was very blissful and easeful. No morning sickness, no challenging symptoms at all, to a birth that was completely ecstatic. And that was one that I/we, me and the baby chose. And despite there being all this information and fear around what might happen if I followed my heart and my intuition in that choice. Yeah, it was such a profound experience. And it was a catalyst for me to go deeply into my line of work, which I mentioned. One facet of my line of work is embodying your sexual power. And that for me has been through a very long journey and experiential exploration of ancient sexual practices and how to use and circulate energy in your body to physically heal, to emotionally balance and heal, to experience spiritual awakening again and again and again. And a lot of my practice of this has actually been not with a partner. I was with my son's dad, who became my husband, who is now my ex-husband. We were together for 15 years, and we didn't actually explore these practices too much together. It was more me learning the alchemical processes in my own body, and that's continued to be true since we've been divorced. And so I have spent a lot of time actually gaining a deeply and subtle embodied understanding of using sexual energy to heal. And I'm in the dissertation process right now. I've completed all of my PhD in mind body medicine, and I'm in the final process of my dissertation study and writing, and that's on the lived experiences of women using their sexual energy to holistically heal and like really bring this powerful force of sexual creative energy that all of us have access to. Being able to communicate with women about this, communicate with people, not just women, with people about this in a way that they understand that it is an underutilized resource that we can tap into for profound healing across the board. I work with people who are experiencing a lot of chronic illness and chronic conditions, who are experiencing relationship challenges, who have histories of sexual trauma, who have creativity blocks, who have just overall feelings of feeling blocked in their life and a disconnect from their life's purpose and path. And one huge aspect of this is embodying your sexual power and knowing how to use your sexual energy, channeling your sexual energy to be able to keep this state of receptivity and flow happening through your body so that there aren't energetic blocks that are happening that lead to imbalances and disease. Another aspect of the work that I'm doing with women, embodying your sexual power is one of them, but I've actually developed a model of healing that's super practical to use called the Wheel of Whole Body Healing. And embodying your sexual power is one of 7 aspects that I direct women to, guide women through when they're experiencing symptoms of any kind, looking at these 7 different facets and seeing which ones are contributing to symptoms with different practices and tools to be able to free up the energy that unexpressed emotional energies are causing or ancestral lineage patterns are causing. These are a few of the facets. And diet and nutrition. I'm a longtime vegan, plant-based, whole food-based, like close to the source. And I'm not preaching being vegan, but like definitely diet and nutrition are a part of one of the facets as well. And so walking women who come to me with symptoms through these facets, and then also being able to use the Wheel of Whole Body Healing as a lifestyle map so that it's not just about being able to address symptoms. It's about being able to stay and maintain being in a vital and balanced state of being, that you can create a lifestyle that's based on that through awareness and through these practices. So I'm a writer. I have a few books. This is one of them. This is on the Wheel of Whole Body Healing, We Choose Love. I have the hard copy and then also ebook on Amazon. And I have a companion course online, go at your own pace course to this book called Intimacy Starts Here. Intimacy, like getting to know your body, yourself, cultivating these deep listening skills and communication skills to free up energy. That can be found, access to both Amazon for the book, but also on my website. And the course you can have access to on my website, which is kristendamato.com. I'll put that up here. And I have like my whole practice both personally and professionally, is around whole body alchemy for the awakening woman. So it's like, how can you embody your most authentic self and experience ecstasy and joy as a daily, in the moments throughout your days, as your norm, as your baseline? Like, that's just, you know how to return there when you get knocked out, and you know how to return there quickly. You know how to open up your heart and your body and your cosmic channels, your crown, in a way that you're receiving, and your perception is open and cultivated, and you're continuing to cultivate these nuanced, subtler ways of communicating that are not what we're taught normally how to do. So this is my specialty. I'm also a musician. You can see the cello back there. I have beautiful, sacred, healing music that I have available on Spotify and other streaming channels. And a poet. I have another book, this pocket-sized book here, Surrendering into Love, Heart-Opening Verses of Ecstasy and Wonder. Yeah, I wish you all the most empowered and present conception and pregnancies and birthing experiences that are beyond your wildest imagination and dreams of how it could be, and that are medicine for your soul, that are profoundly healing, and that are deeply connected and then wisdom, that you get to tap into this well of wisdom that's accessible to you always, and particularly amplified during conception, pregnancy, and birth. That comes from your body and your body's innate knowing how to heal, how to self-regulate, how to come into balance, how to let you know when something is off. That you get to tap into the incredible wisdom of your angel baby's voice and co-create, consciously co-create with your child, this incoming soul, and your team of guides and angels, your spiritual guardians. It's such a miracle. Oh my gosh. Birth and giving birth, being pregnant and being a human, it's such a blessing and such a miracle. I'm going to leave you with a poem. The way that I love to use this book is kind of like oracle cards, where I'll just have a moment of asking for giving me the perfect poem to inspire me. So I'm going to do that for us now to close out this conversation. Thank you for your presence, your listening. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or thoughts to share. And don't hesitate to reach out to me to check out through my website. I have my email, or you can contact me there as well. Instagram, I'll put that up. Kristen D'Amato, it's also. Okay. Okay, this poem is called Transcendence. You are here now with me. Together we transcend all space and time into oneness, fullness, aliveness. This is everything.